Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Know that you're welcome to join us in person for worship in Eden Prairie on Sunday mornings at 9 or 10:30. And also know that any contribution you make will bolster St. Andrew's ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Welcome and God's blessings to you.
As we continue our sermon series, Unstuck, we'll lean together into the Gospel of Matthew as we follow the disciples and hear about God's calling in our lives as well. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning. Welcome to worship this morning, Memorial Day weekend. Wonderful to have you here. I think speaking for the Johnsons, I think all of my yard work is now done. And so we've had a hard go on it yesterday, but now I think it's smooth sailing here the rest of today and tomorrow. But welcome to worship here at St. Andrew. As Pastor Matthew indicated, we continue to celebrate the season of Easter. We want to hear and understand what God is up to as we are unstuck in our sermon series and freed up to be and do, to live in the grace of God and to be God's workers in the world. I'm Pastor Peter Johnson. Good to be with you here this morning as we continue our work here together and our learning about how God takes people, ordinary people, and moves them into becoming impactful people of service, people of giving and sharing. I do think if we think about the God and we think about the work of God in the world and how God relates to us, I sometimes think of God as being a little bit peculiar. Peculiar in the sense that we have God who is so almighty and majestic and so cosmic, that spans time, that spans understanding, is beyond our understanding, that God could be so intimate and personal with people, especially as Pastor Matthew read the gospel reading today, as the disciples are being called one by name. God, our God, and then Jesus making it so much more personal. How did Jesus choose these disciples? Is he going by experience and expertise? Does he see like resounding charisma? Is he calling strategic thinkers, people who are decisive and who are resilient, people who are flawless, who have a background in what it is that Jesus is calling them to do? Is Jesus looking for the Michael Jordans of sports or the J.K. Rowlings or Shakespeare of writers? Is Jesus looking for the leaders that shape the day then and the day today as well? Or is Jesus looking for heart? People who follow and learn and step in the way and make their way together with Jesus. So, as Pastor Matthew read in our reading, we are hearing today about the call of the fishermen, Peter, Andrew, and John, and James, and all the disciples that were fishermen. And I thought I would broaden this passage out a little bit more to think about all the 12 disciples, not just those who in this post-resurrection appearance, when Jesus came alongside them yet again to say that here is what you are about, and you are my disciples. These are the fishermen that are part of the disciples. But if we read on in the Gospels, we know that there are 12. And so we have a farmers or tradesmen. Bartholomew and Thomas were probably farmers and tradesmen. in that day and age. We know that there is a tax collector in the group, that's Matthew is the tax collector. Now, tax collectors, of course, were seen as representing the Roman Empire of the day. And so many interpreters of having Matthew as a member of this group of 12 original disciples would not have been very easy because Matthew was collecting taxes for the Romans that people weren't very excited to pay. So one could say that Matthew was almost a collaborator with the Romans. But yet Jesus in the Gospels, Matthew becomes part of this early Christian community. Peculiar, right? Is God a little bit peculiar? Then we have a zealot right next to Matthew, whose name was Simon, who was a revolutionary. This is someone who was willing, in the historical understanding, to take up arms against the Roman Empire as it had control over this area of the Roman world. And so Simon was a zealot. Now, can you imagine Matthew, this person who is a collaborator with the Romans, and Simon, who was the revolutionary against the Romans, if you had them at the same table together? That's a little bit of what Jesus is doing here. It's peculiar, but that would be quite a conversation for sure. Then we also have a keeper of money, or the betrayer of Judas Iscariot. And then curiously, we don't know anything about James, the son of Alphaeus, or Thaddeus, the other two disciples. But this is our group of people that Jesus is calling to be part of this early Christian community, to unstick the understandings that existed before and to merge a group of people together to learn and grow in this young early ministry of Jesus' revelation that would go now for 3 more years as they made their way. And so I think there are a few lessons that we can learn from this passage and from this understanding of what Jesus is doing. I mean, the first thing that you see is that God sees the potential in everyone. God is the one who sees these eclectic collection of people and says they all will make a difference in my community. This might be a little bit obvious. It might be something that you have heard before, but it is a repeated theme in our scriptures as God engages with people in the world, that they are indeed called, each in their own way, each in their own place, to live faithfully, to learn and to grow. If it isn't Moses, the prophet Moses, who, if you didn't know, dealt with stuttering and stammering as a preacher and as a leader. How does that work? We know that Jesus was also born of a teenage girl named Mary, a young girl for all practical intents and purposes, that God sees potential in everybody. And I sometimes think about how God accumulates these people, brings all these people together. And if Jesus were doing that then and modeling what it means to be community, what was and is God doing amongst the myriad of people here in our world to resemble a ministry that Jesus is calling the world into? We could suspect that God would call people forth from everywhere, from Asia, from the Arab world, from Americans to Mexicans to Canadians, from everywhere, right? We can see languages being represented in that collection of people. This day and age, there weren't very many languages yet, but Jesus was about the task of bringing this Mediterranean region here together into a new mission. You could see rural people and urban people, white-collar people, blue-collar people, Republicans and Democrats. Jesus is assembling this group of people who have a unity in faith and in service in the love of God. It's worth pondering, I think, what Jesus is doing here for Christian community as Jesus pulls this eclectic group of people together in love, to share with each other, to be with one another, and to enjoy one another in the ministry of the church, even if it means also following maybe even where they do not want to go. But Jesus and God sees potential in everybody. And I think that's a good thing for us to remember and to ponder this day and age. I also think it's important to note, too, that everybody needs to start somewhere. So we have these fishermen who started off as fishermen. Probably their fathers were fishermen, and there were fishermen before that, and their grandfathers. And this is where they ended up going after Jesus was crucified and after he was raised, and they didn't fully understand what was happening. But they ended up back doing what they normally are doing. But we all need a starting place to anchor us. We all need a first school. We all need a first car. For me, it was a Ford Pinto. I survived it. I did. We need a first job. Hardee's Restaurants. For me, the disciples needed a place to start here as well. I was thinking a bit, and you've probably been following what happened earlier on in May with the election of the new Pope in the Roman Catholic Church, Robert Francis Provost, the Cardinal, who is from South America, who became the 276th pontiff earlier this month, and of course is the leader now of 1.4 billion Catholic Christians around the world. You've been following that, I think, too. And I was caught by a story in the media when the conclave was over and he was elected Pope. He called home to Chicago to his brother. Did you hear about this? He called to his brother in Chicago, and he called 4 times. Apparently, his phone wasn't there. His brother was already talking to the media and so forth. And I heard the recording when he finally picked up. This newly elected pope said the words, "Where have you been? Where have you been?" Which made me think a little bit about if somebody was calling me of that importance. Say my brother was elected pope, for instance. If my brother were to call, would I just not pick up? Would I change my contact to say Pope, and the Pope would come up on my iPhone screen or something like that? But my point is how wonderful and how humble it is that this Bob was prior just a son and a brother from Chicago who speaks English just like any of us do, and has gone on to, of course, speak other languages as well. But he comes from these humble origins to which I think you and I can relate in different ways these days. As he then, as I heard the interview, then he talked with his brother, and they talk every day now, and that's what he probably will continue to do, even if it's a busy job leading the Catholic Church. But faithful people come from simple, humble places. That's my point. We all need a simple place to start that gets us going, humble roots, places where we reside. And for me and for all of us, we all just have a place to start. And then we may not become the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, but we go from there, don't we? And that's where we make our way. We all have to start from somewhere. And Jesus sees that in these 12 disciples. They're starting out and they're getting going, and walks along beside them. And so finally, then we also see, I think, too, in this story, is that Jesus is calling them all by name, all of them by name, by their first names, as if to say one person at a time. One person at a time, given the gift of grace, of forgiveness, of life, and salvation, one person at a time. And on this Memorial Day weekend, a day when our nation takes a break from work tomorrow to honor those who have served in our country, but also, as we have more broadly adapted it, those who have also died, who we honor on Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to share again a little bit of the story that perhaps you know of my own background with my grandfather, Elmer, and my grandmother, Ruth. So I don't know when this picture was taken, probably sometime in the 80s. Elmer died in 1995. He was a month short of his 100th birthday. He was born in 1896. And at that point in time, for many years, he and his and Grandma Ruth were in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And that's where I picked up essentially my thinking relationship with them as a not just a little boy or a child, but as an adult, and really enjoyed them in many ways. Now, Grandpa was a World War I veteran, so he got to Europe. He quickly got sick, as many of the soldiers did, and ended up in the hospital for about a month, and then the war ended. So he never saw any hostility or action while he was there. But he proudly, every 4th of July, would be a representative from the World War I veterans and would ride along on the 4th of July parade through Detroit Lakes as a representative of World War I, and then eventually, being almost 100 years old, would continue to ride, but would be the only one in the Jeep. So I remember he also was a profound Christian witness, too, from very humble origins. Not someone who came with a great wealth or background, but came with a conviction of faith to be honest and real in the love of God and in Christian service. He went to Gustavus. He went to Augustana Seminary in Rock Island, Illinois, the Swedish Lutheran Church, and served really only in small churches for his whole ministry, mostly in Minnesota, North and South Dakota. So 2 years ago, when my mother was visiting, we decided that we would go up to Detroit Lakes and Fargo, where I spent my high school years. And we had lunch at a restaurant along Detroit Lake, and we decided we would go to the cemetery to see where Elmer and Ruth are buried. And I remember thinking, I'm not prepared to do this because I don't know where their plot is. It's been 20 years since I had been there, and my mom the same. So I Googled it and I found out what the number was. But then when we drove to the cemetery, there was no such thing as a key at the entrance to the cemetery that would point me in the right direction. And so Mom and I just thought to ourselves, we're close enough. We're here, we're remembering Elmer and Ruth, and that's it. Until a red truck pulled in behind us and stopped and got out. The man got out and he asked the question, so are you looking for someone? And I said, thank you. My mom and I are visiting from the Twin Cities. My grandfather, her parents-in-law, are buried here. Elmer and Ruth Johnson. Johnson, as common a name as possible, right? So I said, Elmer Ruth Johnson, he was a pastor here in the area many years ago. Again, he died in 1995, and this was 2023. So this was almost 30 years later. And then he said the words to me, was he short? Yes, he was. And then he said, follow me. So he took off, went around our car, and we zigged and zagged through the cemetery, pulled up to, as you will see here, the Janky Johnson grave area. He knew exactly who Elmer and Ruth Johnson were. And so here was my mom and me. She's behind me. Here, I didn't have a picture of her to share with you here this morning. But he has a very simple grave marker, as you can see. Though I guess that's Ruth C. Johnson. His is next to this one, which has a World War I. I'll make that change for the next service. I guess I didn't read that slide well enough before. I know exactly where to find him. But you get the picture. There's a World War I military grave marker that designates my grandfather's grave. And there is this man in a red pickup truck who, for whatever reason, knew of Elmer and Ruth and their ministry that was happening in the Detroit Lakes area. one person at a time. Humble origins we all come from, and we don't necessarily need to land in great places to do the things that God calls us to do. That God ultimately, friends, wants God's hands and feet everywhere, so that there might be people in red pickups or a myriad of other people who might know what love and grace, mercy and forgiveness really is. So I wonder, as we are here on this Memorial Day weekend, who's the one person today or this week who will experience kindness, warmth, forgiveness through you? Who's the one person who will get a taste of God's goodness for us and for our world? I have no doubt that each and every one of you will ripple from the 1 to the 12 and to the ends of the earth, goodness and love and grace, because you too are called and you too serve and you too make an impact one way or another for the sake of Christ in the world. Thanks be to God for that. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope that this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Any contribution you make to St. Andrew will bolster our ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Thank you for joining us for this podcast, and I wish you every blessing from Christ today.